This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Call the meeting of the Southampton Select Board for Tuesday, September 13th to order with 4 out of 5 members present. First order will be Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item is open time for the public. Any member of the public wishing to address the Select Board may do so at this time. I know that we have, I know there's the COA director would like to address us, so we can,
Yeah.
Do you want to address it?
I can just cover that, I hope, for her. We wanted to announce Janet Kane, Glendale Road, Chair of the Southampton Council on Aging Board, on behalf of the Friends on Sunday, September 25th, the Friends of the Council on Aging will be presenting comedian Dave Kane, not my brother, and his jokes my Irish father told me. It is at Hampshire Regional High School. Doors will open at 1:45. Showtime is 2:30. There are tickets available at the Senior Center, or you can reach out to any members of the Friends. So just if you needed more information, Joan, I filled in for you since you were filling in for me. So please join us. We still have space available. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member, public? Seeing reports of Select Board, open space. Cindy Palmer.
Yep. Good evening, Cindy Palmer, 71 Glendale Road. So I'm going to give you the regular report. I guess it's not really quarterly anymore, but I'm also going to revisit the topic that I had come before you with last meeting, I think. So I'll start with the report, which is just a review of our recent and current activities of the Open Space Committee. We had last reported, according to my notes, in February of this year. Since then, we have continued to meet with landowners who have approached us, essentially, or ask questions related to any kind of interest they might have in open space issues or conserving lands. We, as I pointed out before, we protect the confidentiality of people who approach us in that they may merely be just exploring options versus wishing to be publicly noted as what they're doing. So we're a resource to them. We further supported the thank you event that occurred on May 26th of this year to thank Ted Hendrick and Paula Hendrick, his daughter, for the donation of property that they gave, which is on the corner of Crooked Ledge Road and Cold Spring Road. Remarks at that event were made, and I hope I'm not missing people, but they were made by people from the Friends of Southampton Open Space, the Conservation Commission, the Select Board, Conservation Works, and Kestrel Land Trust, both who worked closely with the Hendricks, and also the Hampshire Gazette covered this event. It was kind of a lovely day, and I will say I had feedback from Paula, Ted's daughter, that he really was thrilled with the way it went. We've also continued to work on a garden of some sort at the water protection area on Lower Pomeroy Meadow Road. It is somewhat of a departure from the original plan, which was a large, fairly expensive process, which included the installation of pavers, et cetera. And we are definitely focused on making sure that wildflowers and native pollinators are at least part of the project. This is the Good Earth Gardeners, which is a new volunteer garden group in town, will be undertaking this. And because there were ARPA funds awarded for this project, we will be, as necessary, submitting reports at the time they're due. We also, the Open Space Committee, participated in Celebrate Southampton. It was a fabulous, fabulous day for everybody, and lots of people stopped by our table to ask questions. The big project, which you've already heard about, is the exploration of a grant which would be working towards a large conservation project in coordination with Kestrel Land Trust, and it would likely include, and we're researching it at this point, the application for a Massachusetts Landscape Partnership Grant. And you know all about that because it was presented previously by Bridget Likely from Kestrel Land Trust. And to move forward to find out how successful this could be, 11 letters went out to a target list of landowners earlier this month, and I said at the time of the creation of the report that 2 immediately responded, which was true, but I've subsequently heard from some others, and so we're moving forward on that. And I will keep you periodically updated about what's going on that. Current projects, it's essentially the bolded paragraph above. And I'm just going to skip down to budget and spending concerns. Thank you very much. There was a line item in the town budget for us to utilize $500 essentially for mailing and printing. We haven't had anything come up because we still had some letterhead and some stamps available to us from a previous project that was covered by a neighborhood outreach grant. But it's good to know that that money is there because very much may need that. And personnel and staffing, we get a lot of support from our town administrator and our town administrator assistant. And I really appreciate the collaboration in this town that goes on between boards and committees to make things happen. And that's helps the fact that we're all a volunteer. We are a volunteer committee. What are we going to do in the next 4 to 6 months? Well, excuse my way of putting it, but we're going to work like crazy to succeed in the project that we're undertaking. We will keep the Select Board, Concom, CPC, and the Town Administrator appraised of our progress, and we will maintain a focus on the goals outlined in the Open Space and Recreation Plan, as well as the Select Board's charge to the Open Space Committee. So I'll take questions on any of that if you'd like, or I'm going to jump into the reformation of our charge.
Any questions on the first part? Comments?
No.
Okay. So I came before you before and I proposed some changing in the membership specifically of the Open Space Committee. And so did you get the updated one? I think
Yeah.
Ed was going to make copies. Thank you so much, Ed.
You're welcome.
So I was advised the last time I came to please go back to the committee because it was raised, the point was raised that it's really a good idea to have somebody from assessors on the committee. So I did go back, speak to the Open Space Committee, and we do agree with that. So while we recognize the assessors currently may not have enough personnel, excuse me, then we still think we should maintain a position on pardon me, on the Open Space Committee, which would include 6 appointees, 1 from the Board of Assessors, 1 from Planning Board, 1 from Community Preservation Committee, 1 from Select Board, 1 from Parks Commission, and 1 from Conservation Commission. And we currently have 1 at-large position at this moment. That is, at this moment, vacant, but we will try to think of ways to be certain that as much as possible an assessor can attend our meetings. Might mean changing the night of our meetings. We don't know yet how that's going to work. Maybe over time a new assessor will come on, etc. So the alteration is to keep those 6 appointed positions and make it a total of 3 at-large positions, which would be appointed by the Select Board. So that is where we stand right now, and I certainly can take questions regarding that if...
I do have a clarifying question. I thought in the meeting we discussed opening up to the membership to outside of Southampton. Is that something that we discussed?
We did discuss it, but I didn't think we thought it would be something we would do.
We compared it to Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
And how that would be done, but I don't think
You're talking about for the Open Space Committee or our assessors?
for the Open Space Committee.
I definitely remember discussing it, Joy. I don't remember that we're not missing the opportunity to bring members onto the open space, or at-large members. The issue is of a particular board, at this current time, Board of Assessors. That was my understanding of our discussion.
Yes, but I also know that we were talking about the general reformation of the charge of the committee, correct? And discussing if we wanted to open that up to people outside of town.
I somehow remembered a little differently, that I didn't think we were opening it, because I don't think we lack for interest on the Open Space Committee, and nor do we have trouble
I
filling.
don't disagree.
Yeah.
But I do recall having this conversation.
Yeah, we did.
Though, and saying if it was going to be changed, it needed to be changed now while it was being addressed.
Okay. Well, we can open that up if we think.
I don't have a position either way.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring that to your attention because I'm pretty sure we discussed it in the last meeting, and it's saying it's still the residents of Southampton, which I'm fine with. I don't have.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Okay.
Others?
I think it's a great idea. I'm glad that you're holding.
Which is the great idea? The
Increasing the number of at-large members and keeping the assessors. Right now, I know assessors is in a little bit difficult place because one of the members is moving and resigned from the committee. But we did have someone come to the meeting who might be interested in being on the committee. And the hope is that now that September is here, that maybe we will get more applicants for a principal assessor. So I'm just hoping it's just a difficult time for that particular department, but I'm glad, because when I was on open space, we got so much information from the assessors and maps and lists and all that kind of stuff. So it would be really important, I think. I'm glad you decided to do that.
Anyone else?
Can I raise with
Sure.
the select board what Joy just raised? Do you think we should, in fact, consider altering or proposing an alteration in the charge which would allow changing it from just Southampton residents to out-of-town residents? I just wonder what you
I
think.
do want to clarify, it was in the context of expertise and having non-residents who had the expertise in that field being part of the committee. And it's very specific, and we discussed this during the meeting, it was very specific for Conservation Commission because that's, you have the wetlands bylaw, that's a very specific area that there are outside, that needs consulting, and that's why it's a benefit to the town to have non-residents be on the committee because they can volunteer the expertise versus I don't know if that's something that the Open Space Committee actually is looking for, specific expertise that is necessary, or just I'm not saying it should be opened up to all residents. It was a discussion that we discussed. I'm not saying it needs to happen.
Okay.
I just brought it up because we are looking at the bylaw.
Well, it does raise a concern. Right now, my understanding is the Conservation Commission might have out-of-town members because of their expertise.
Yes.
So is it possible that one of their out-of-town members at some point in time might be the appointee to the Open Space Committee, in which case would they be, at the way it's written currently, automatically eliminated because they're not town residents from the Open Space Committee? So that's a good point.
Something to consider, yes.
I just wanted to go on record and say I'm very opposed to having people outside of town on this particular committee. Conservation Commission is different. I don't think they generally apply for funding. I think that, and I'll bring it up tonight when we talk about the Housing Trust too, a lot of funding to open space and housing is likely going to come and has come from CPC, which is taxpayers in Southampton. So I think that Concom, when they had Tony, I forget his last name, he was incredibly knowledgeable, and I think that he added a lot to the committee. And so I think Conservation Commission is different than Open Space Committee, which is actively looking to secure lands for conservation, and housing is very actively looking for affordable housing. And I think that affects CPC very directly.
So based on that, would you, because there is a non-resident on Conservation Commission, based on this reading, would you interpret to be that individual could not fill this role?
Yes.
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 So that's the question. Are we good with that or not?
I'm just thinking, what is the language on the Conservation Commission that allows them to have
I don't have the language of the conservation.
Yeah, I don't have the charge.
Okay. I mean, you might want to take a
But-
look
But
at
it says right here that if you're going to be on this committee, you have to be a Southampton resident, so that
Yes.
would.
That's the
be
point. That's the point. If the Tony person of the future was in fact interested and appointed from the Conservation Commission and did not reside in Southampton, that person could not be on the Open Space Committee as an appointee unless we put in something that clarified under that sort of circumstance.
Would you say something like, would be the decision of the sending committee being represented, whether or not they would require their participant to be
Could this be addended
resident?
if there was that kind of circumstance? Could the Open Space Committee come to the Select Board at that time and just say, we need to, addend this for this particular circumstance?
But also, to Renee's point, do we really want a non-resident making representations on two different committees in town?
Or the other way is 8 of the 9 must be town residents, so there's never a non-resident majority? Because more than likely, it's going to fall to the 3 select board appointees. Because traditionally, we don't put non-residents on these other committees. That was a unique circumstance on conservation. Or we leave it as is. I mean, I don't have a feeling one way or the other.
I'm okay with
I think
leaving.
this speaks for I think this speaks for itself. Basically says that if you're going to be a member, you have to be a resident.
So
I'm happy enough.
With how it's worded now?
Well, I think there should be a caveat in here that allows if they need certain type of expertise and are able to recruit it and happens to be from out of town.
But do they have to be voting members? I think that's part of it.
Could
'cause-
be on as advisors, just not have the power of a
Well,
vote.
that's kind of the circumstance we have right now. I mean, we don't have them on the committee, but they attend.
It still allows you that expertise.
Yeah.
Just don't have the power. It's
Yeah.
kind of like putting the town administrator on certain committees. He doesn't have the vote, but he's there for
Yeah,
his
like ex
expertise and
officio
knowledge.
sort of situation. I'm good with that. Again, even our most recent meeting, we had 2 people from Kestrel come and kind of give an update on what's going on to our Open Space Committee. They're not voting.
Right.
They're just providing information. I don't know that it has to be in the charge, though, does it? Any more than people that come to the Select Board with a certain level of expertise. They're just presenting something.
And as far as Section 2 and Section 3, there were no changes from the original charge.
Correct, but I think Ed's going to do some alteration. Is it Section 2 on the terms, Ed, that I think you told me about?
That would be correct, now that I actually have this document. If not any other further changes were made, I would make some changes to Section 2 in regards to the 3 at-large members and for the 3 years and staggering them and making the 6 appointments or elections from the boards or committees 1-year terms.
Just fine with me. So then we just
Reappoint.
renew them every year based on their appointment from another committee or another board.
And will the increasing of the committee during the open space and recreation plan, will that stay the same at 15?
Yeah, I would say so, because that was meant to be a particular set of tasks that were needing the representation from the other boards and committees.
And you expect that this committee would be appointed by the select board, right? Members of the open space, like the at-large
Only the
people?
at-large.
Okay.
Yeah, the other ones are appointed by their boards or committees.
Any other discussion? Is there a motion to approve this with the amendment to Section 2, that the 6 committees shall be annually reappointed, and that the 3 at-large, one shall be for initial 1 year, second for initial 2 year, third for 3 year, and then all 3 years after that?
I'd suggest you actually wait for me to write that to approve the whole
So
thing.
we're going to take this under consideration and move
Yeah, I
on.
mean, if the select board is good with all the other sections, and there's no further, shall we say, edits or amendments to those, I can follow up with that section too.
It will take a vote of the select board when you finalize your
Yes.
drafts. It's okay with me. We're
Okay.
moving along, so. But I think, am I right, Ed, that there's been at least one applicant to be considered for at-large? Is that going to be brought up tonight?
I believe that is on the agenda.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
Yes.
But that we still have one open position right now, so we're fine if there's one applicant.
for a 1 year, a 2 year, 3 year term?
Or 3,
Shall we do?
yeah.
Thank you.
That would be the piece that we need to know to fill in.
Okay.
Anything else?
You'll have to also
No.
change where it says quorum requirement. I mean,
Where's that?
Quorum requirement.
4-member, oh, yeah, it'd have to be more than 4 now, right?
It'd be 5.
Yeah.
Have to be 5, yeah. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, Mrs. Ahart, Community Preservation.
Virginia Ahart, 27 Fulmer Road, Chair of the Community Preservation Committee. This is an anniversary year, 20 years.
Wow.
And we were in the first round of state grants. We were one of the first towns in the state to move pass the Community Preservation Act and move forward with this. So there are a lot of things that are very much the same. Some things have changed, but basically, there's still the 9 places. Just to go back a little bit, each city and town that adopts Community Preservation Act within certain parameters can say how it's going to operate in their town. So as the select board and others were putting this together, they made some changes to the state requirements. And what they did was, instead of just having the 5 designated groups that have to have representation, they added 2 more people and 2 people elected by the town to represent the town people. The ones that they had to have, let's see if I can remember all these without having to read. Park Commission, Historical Commission, Conservation Commission, Housing Authority, and Planning Board. So we have to have representatives from each of those. They added finance and someone from the selectmen, as that was known 20 years ago. And we're very happy that we have someone now from the select board. And that was a wise move, really, because the delegate from the select board has always been someone that was very helpful. And certainly we have someone right now that is. So we got started, and just give you an idea, 20 years ago we got our first state matching grant. And I have to look it up. It was $57,597. The one we got last year happened to be, let me see if I can find this here, what was 250,000 something. 2 things changed on that grant. So now, the deed, every time you make a deed transfer, you pay into the pot for community preservation committees. And I try to stress this if I'm talking with someone who's asking me who doesn't have it. Your residents are paying that fee, and they're getting nothing back. In fact, your residents are helping Southampton. They did raise the fee so that now, instead of the $25 it was back then, it's $50. So if you're doing some deed transfers, plan on that. And I'll just tell you, our very first project, we were so excited when we got it done. It was a combination project between the water department and the cemetery and us to fund a piece of property which the town owns that abuts in just one corner our cemetery, but goes up onto the hill. And the Cemetery Commission has a plan that was funded by community preservation funds, but they are not planning on moving up there until all the lots are sold down here. So I don't know what time that those things will go into effect. But we were so thrilled when we got that first project and got it through. Method is still the same way. Anybody, any committee, board, council can present a project, but so can anybody else, even individuals. They have to fit the framework the state organized. We haven't turned, as a committee in those 20 years, we haven't turned anything down when it got to the committee. But luckily, people would come and talk, and we could say, nope, you can't do that. It doesn't fit. And one of the things that we did very early, which is still with us, is membership in this Community Preservation Coalition. And anyone can go to that website and you can find all sorts of interesting things. You can find every project, not just that Southampton has done, but every project that's been completed in this state under community preservation funds. It can be a little fun. You can even go in and search by topic, so you can find out what other people are doing. So the other thing that's changed is when we started, we got a lot of small projects, important ones, but small, especially around preservation of historic resources. The church came to us. They had the book that was the first record of everybody in town. No, you know, go back, it's long enough ago, there was no separation of church and state. So they had the records of all the first settlers, births, deaths, but it was only one copy. And people searching their ancestors that had been here in town would have to use that book. Well, it's a pretty precious book to be that old and all that information. So one of our early projects was to fund their copying, and they made copies for Town Hall, for the Historical Commission, for the library, so that when people come looking, they don't have to handle the original. Little things like that, important, but, you know, we were busy. We met every Wednesday, first Wednesday of the month. So you bring your project to community preservation. We go over it. If we like it, okay. If we think it fits, okay. If it doesn't fit the criteria, we don't pass it on. But we don't get very many that far, because usually we're able to, someone in the group is able to say to the person earlier, that doesn't work, or this would be not a good one. And in fact, this year I had 2 such projects that came. One I thought was kind of far-fetched, and I just you know, I knew it wasn't going anyplace, but I did check with Community Preservation Coalition. The other one was one I would have loved to have supported. I personally support that kind of thing. It got done, but without funding, because there's just nothing in our, what we can do that it would fit into. So it goes to us. Then if we pass it, we send it on to the select board, who decides whether or not it should be put on the annual town meeting. And you still have an opportunity to stop it if you don't like it and don't think it fits in. Then it goes to town meeting. When I say anyone can bring that kind of thing, we've had groups, 3 or 4 boards that got together and say, you know, we'd really like this. And we've had individuals. The PTO came forward and they wanted one year a pre-K playground. It was funded. They did the work. They got this nice playground. There was no shade. It was in the sun. And a Girl Scout came forward and said, can you help me? I want to get a shade over, and that was just recently. I want to get a shade over that playground so the children won't be getting so hot sitting in the sun. So that's an example of what can come forward. Of course, it has to be an open space recreation, affordable or community or whatever they're calling it now, housing, and historical preservation. And there again, it can be everything from a building to just a small set of documents. So, at the last couple of town meetings, I'll just highlight a couple of the things that got passed. The pickleball court. And they had a dedication of it, a very nice evening. And I understand it's busy every minute of the day. And pickleball has become so popular that the physical education program at Norris School includes it. So the young people are learning to play pickleball. The work that was done by the Historical Society on the Clark Chapman House, the shoring up and preserving of the building has been completed. There are still some things that need to be completed, but that's the community preservation part, was shoring it up and protecting it so other things can happen. And they had a nice open house in the early summer to celebrate that. And of course they had their ice cream social again on 4th of July there at the house, and people were going through. There's always one that is hard to report. I know it's undergoing. One of the reasons it's hard to report is they want a street address. Okay, the one that was one of the ones that was out there, and it's still not, I think, not quite completed, is the mapping of the canal. What's the street address on the old canal bed? So I'm filling it in, hoping that they accept from the Westfield line to the Easthampton line. It's in through fields. But that is one that, a preservation one that wasn't very expensive, but kind kind of interesting when you go to report it. The other thing that is happening right now is that for almost 20 years, we've been stockpiling, well, first of all, you have to, when the funds come in, 1/10 of them has to be saved for open space recreation. 1/10 of them has to be saved for the historical, and 1/10 of them has to be saved for housing. And they've called it a number of things, but they wanted people to make sure that people knew it wasn't low-income housing. It was affordable. Now they're calling it community. So if we don't spend our money in one, and then the rest can go into undesignated. Community preservation has been stockpiling, really, the funds for the housing. And now things are happening. Finally, after 20 years. And I think most everyone on the committee is very happy about that. We'll wait to see what all comes, but there is effort on that part. The popular things right now in the state are the open space with an emphasis, as we did twice. We partially funded 2 projects to preserve water. Well, we did one before in connection with Easthampton. But the emphasis is really on water sources. This is what people are getting projects going on. So that's something that is out there. The other project in historical that has been very popular is cemeteries, preserving of stones. And we have had some projects on that. It'd really be nice if they could find someone to repair the fence, because we could help with that. Community preservation could help with that. I happen to, on Celebrate Southampton, I happened to go up and visit the West Part Cemetery, and that looks great up there. It's a beautiful small cemetery. Those are the 2 things that towns and cities are looking at right now. Very happy that we're in the coalition, and we can ask when something is acceptable and something isn't. And I happen to know, and I'm not going to put down any other community, but I happen to know that there are a couple communities near here who are having difficulties using their community preservation funds, and I know they're not looking at this coalition. But I'm not going to go there. So we're now kind of waiting to hear what we might need to do, and especially the housing. There is one thing that happened, and I don't quite understand it. When we began, we were told that it could be used to help keep people in their homes if they needed, like ramps and things like that. We did not, as a committee, we did not want to have to go to town meeting and say, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so need a ramp. So we put the money in the hands of the almoners. And they actually still have some of that to help. But then the state said, no, you can't do that. Then, during COVID, they decided that community preservation funds could be used to help people pay their rent. I don't quite understand this change of heart or something. But anyway, we're just hoping and waiting for some things around the housing, because the money's there. And I do understand that the land purchase is moving forward, but that just made a little dent in the funds that are there. I don't know. We haven't had a lot of projects so that I can report on all these wonderful things, but they're big projects now.
Any questions?
No?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Try
you.
to get you home before the rain hits.
Yeah.
Next, we have the Conservation Commission. Is there anybody to report on, or you just want me to read it? No?
Well, I can read it, or
Speedily.
the Select Board liaison to the
Yes.
Conservation
Just,
could read
No
it.
problem reading
A
it.
little speed reading?
Sure. Okay. Conservation Commission submitted this report written, current priorities and activities. As permits are requested of us, we arrange site visits, hold public hearings, and issue the signed paperwork to the applicants and Mass DEP. During the last 7 months, we reviewed 4 certificates of compliance, 3 notices of intent, 5 requests for determination of applicability, and 1 enforcement order. We went on 13 site visits, not counting meetings with contractors on our own properties. A considerable amount of time has been spent on preparing for work on the Manhan Meadows Sanctuary Trail and Bridge. We have a contract for the trail work, which should begin in October. We are in the process of getting a Chapter 91 license from DEP for the new bridge. We again ask that the community be reminded that the Manhan Meadows Sanctuary is closed to the public due to dangerous trail conditions. We would also ask that the public be reminded that while their dogs are welcome to join them on walks on our trails, plastic bags of waste should not be left on the conservation properties. We thank the Friends of Southampton Open Space for the purchase and installation of signs at the Clark Family Homestead and for cleanup work on several conservation properties. Budget spending status concerns. We thank Town Accountant Bradley Oskin for his time and effort working with Conservation Commissioner Art Lawrence to review our accounts. Balances in the town's records and Conservation Commission's records agree. Personnel staffing updates. We expect to be interviewing candidates for the conservation agent position within the next few weeks. Plans/events for the next 4 to 6 months. Alice Brown Conservation Area. Logging is underway. A small parking lot will be constructed and signs will be installed. Manhan Meadows Sanctuary. Trail renovation will be done on the East Street side of the river. The bridge replacement project will be put out to bid. Invasive plant management should begin on several properties. SIPTA Conservation Farm. 2 no longer functioning culverts will be removed. Long-term issues for Select Board consideration/planning. After the ARPA funding for the conservation agent runs out, we still need to pay for a conservation agent. Suggested tools, resources to help do your job more efficiently or cost-effectively. Having updated access to the Conservation Commission's webpage would be more efficient to upload and download files and exchange text on our page as needed. That is the end.
Any questions? No?
Do we have a plan? Are we, in regards to future conservation agent funds, is that something that we're keeping in the back of our minds?
I think we're aware of it, that we're using the ARPA funds for the next 2 years, but.
Okay.
Next, we have a presentation, joint meeting with the Senior Center Feasibility Committee.
Good evening. I'd like to call the September 13th meeting of the Ad Hoc Senior Center Feasibility Committee to order. Andrew Lafosse is participating remotely due to distance. Welcome, Andrew. I probably won't speak as fast as Joy.
Can you hear them, Andrew?
Yes, hi, sorry.
Okay. Hi, Andrew. Welcome. Certainly, thank you for this time and opportunity. I'd like to, again, introduce for the Select Board as well as for those viewing at home, our committee members, the co-chairs, myself, Janet Kane, COA Board Chair, and Andrew Lafosse, who is an engineer, our clerk, Audrey Pierce, who also is an engineer, Libby Baldwin, who is also an engineer, Darcy Gasparini, a realtor, member of the Board of Assessors and a local business owner, Maureen Groden, Select Board and voting member, Ron Lauren, our building commissioner, and our 2 ex officio members, Ed Gibson, our town administrator, and Joan Linehan, our COA director. So that's, I'm going to tell you, it's been an honor to work with this group and to continue working with them through this study.
I think one thing that's been helpful is actually Andrew's an architect.
Architect, yes, Andrew's an architect engineer.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. All right, the committee has accomplished a great deal in the 5 months, this short amount of time since we've started, and as you know, we're on a tight deadline to meet and complete the study as laid out in the estate of David Red Parsons. Some of the critical research, including site visits and outline of minimum requirements for a growing population of seniors, has been completed by the COA Board Subcommittee prior to April and the forming of this committee. I just want to do a quick review of the project timeline, again, mostly for the viewing public. The Ad hoc Senior Center Feasibility Committee first met on April 14th and elected officers and established a meeting day and time. They spent meetings in May and early June researching the viability of potential sites and properties for a future senior center. The request to the Select Board was made at the June 21st meeting for the outreach to those landowners. The committee also defined town-owned buildings to be listed in the RFQ. The committee set an RFQ completion target date of June 23rd. The RFQ preparation was led by Libby Baldwin and was reviewed and approved by the committee members. It was completed on schedule. Once finalized, the RFQ was distributed to firms by request. The firms had the opportunity to submit any written follow-up questions to Ed Gibson by July 14th. An addendum to the RFQ was developed by Libby Baldwin and Andrew Lafosse and was finalized and sent to the firms by Ed Gibson on July 22nd. All final RFQ responses were received by August 4th at 1:00 p.m. The committee received RFQ responses from 5 firms: Abacus from Alston, Mass., BH+A from Boston, Mass., C&B from Chicopee, Catlin from Peterborough, New Hampshire, and EDM from Farmington, Connecticut. The committee agreed to have the town administrator create an evaluation score sheet. Each voting committee member would independently score the firms based on the established criteria listed in the RFQ. The members sent their responses back to Ed Gibson for compilation without any discussion amongst the members. The review of the scoring of the RFQs took place at the August 18th meeting, where the committee voted to interview the 2 highest scoring firms, Abacus and EDM. Interviews with Abacus and EDM were held on September 1st in the Select Board room. I believe you have copies of both of their presentations. Were handed out to the Select Board members. Following the presentation, the co-chairs, Kane and Lafosse, created 7 questions and emailed them to the 11 references provided by the firms. We requested a response date by September 11th. Our committee met yesterday, September 12th, to discuss the feedback from the references and to vote on our final recommendation for today's Select Board meeting. The committee voted 6-0 in favor of Abacus. It certainly was a difficult decision, as everyone commented that either firm would be highly qualified to perform a feasibility study for Southampton. The target date for the recommended firm to the Select Board was scheduled. The target date for the recommended firm to be presented to the Select Board was September 16th. We are 3 days early. Who would have thought? Once approved by the Select Board this evening, the contract will be overnighted tomorrow, hopefully, to Abacus for review and signature. signatures. Our first meeting with them is tentatively scheduled for October 6th. So why Abacus? And I'm going to turn that over to our in-house committee architect, Andrew Lafosse.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I would just like to expand on some of the important factors and decision-making criteria that were important to this committee, and ultimately why we've chosen Abacus as our preferred firm to conduct the feasibility study. As Janet mentioned, both firms would have done an excellent job for the community. However, there were a few items that set Abacus apart from the competition. The first one being awards and recognition. Most notably, the firm recognition in universal design principles for seniors. That includes multiple American Institute of Architects awards for accessible and inclusive design in several of their projects. The second being the Harrelson Parker Medal, which is awarded by a jury to the most beautiful piece of architecture, building, monument, or structure in the metropolitan Boston area in the past 10 years. And the tertiary most notable award would be that one of the partners is recognized as a fellow of the American Institute of Architects, which is the highest honor that an architect in the U.S. can receive. It's awarded by a jury and factors in career, built works, and philanthropy, among other things. The second most notable advantage for Abacus would be that the consultants and all team members are local to the architect. This way, there's not as much coordination and effort involved in working together internally in their internal team to deliver the town a comprehensive feasibility study. The third being schedule. They have made a commitment to complete the study by March 16th, 2023, with all key consultants and decision makers adhering to that schedule as well. We also thought it was important to consider public outreach and engagement. Their public outreach and community engagement recommendations and visuals were preferred by the committee. The methods of their community engagement include surveys, design charrettes, and they're very well versed in various public meeting approaches. Their conceptual design flexibility, they can provide a range of scalable program options, which include small, medium, or large options for various sites. With a cost estimator included in their project team, each design option will be associated with a cost early on in the process, which is extremely helpful. They have also promised to be quick to identify sites that have too many constraints and would not be suitable for a senior center. This will eliminate any unnecessary research and streamline the process. They are willing to work with other consultants as it relates to any public safety complex, feasibility study, as both committees work in parallel and as needed, which we felt was also important. The committee felt their decision matrix approach was a critical element in being able to portray the comparative data between sites and ultimately an extremely helpful resource to eventually choose a site. So those were the factors that we had mainly considered, and areas where Abacus had not a big, but a notable advantage over EDM. Again, both firms would have done a great job, but we feel comfortable recommending Abacus as our chosen firm moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, discussion?
No.
So I believe the Council on Aging Feasibility Committee is looking for a vote of approval to move forward with this tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve Abacus as the firm that's engaged for the senior center building feasibility project.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? My only is the funding source for this, for the record? What's the funding source?
Yes, the funding source is the monies that we have a certain allocation that comes from the estate that we can utilize for the funding of this.
This falls at or below that level?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
The RFQ specifies $60,000 or less.
Yeah, we had a high point of $60,000,
Not to
a max
exceed.
not to exceed.
Okay. Any other discussion?
No.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? None. It passes. Any other items you need for us? Mike?
I just would like to thank you all and thank again the committee, and I need to have a motion to adjourn.
And because you have a participant remotely, it has to be by roll call?
Yes, it does, but I need a motion first to adjourn. I make a motion to adjourn. Okay, on a second, please? Second by Libby. All in favor, roll call. Andrew?
Aye.
Audrey? Aye. Libby? Aye. Rini?
Aye.
And Janet? Aye. Thank
Just
you.
want to say this committee's done a great job. I mean, in a very short amount of time, as you can see, and it's been very detailed and methodical and just thoughtful. So thank you.
And we're looking forward to March 16th
Yeah.
to bring you the final project.
All right, next is Town Administrator's Report.
All right, thank you all. Thanks, Ed.
Andrew.
Hang on, I'll sign out of here, and I'll go down to my other seat.
Sure. While you're doing that, Ed, why don't we jump to Select Board reports? Francine?
Okay. I'm making up for lost time from last time. So, the Board of Health met on September 6th. A number of options were discussed to recruit a replacement for our health agent who resigned, Nicole Fletcher, some of which will not be viable. They reviewed a draft agreement for a consultant to assist with town inspections on an emergency basis. It will be finalized at the next scheduled meeting. The Board of Health will submit a PRF in order to post the vacant position soon if they've not already done so. They will outreach to other communities to see if they could share health agent services, and will contact the Shared Health Consortium led by Northampton to see if there's any help available through that organization during this time. While they're exploring these options, the Board of Health will review its budget to determine the number of health agent consultant hours that they can support under this interim agent status. They are also reviewing inspection data to get an accurate measure of the number and type of inspections they need in order to plan for any potential budget transfers or amendments. This information will be presented to the Select Board in the short term. The next Board of Health meeting is scheduled for October 3rd. Moving on to the Bylaws Committee, we had a remote meeting with our representative from E360. Over the last 5 months, the Bylaw Committee has been reviewing the comments and responding to questions that this company put forward in order to develop the manuscript, as they call it, of our bylaws that will be available online for our residents. So they have all of our responses. Now they have to go and incorporate that into the version that they have now, and they expect to have that completed by January or February of '23. From that time, when they send us this next, the final document, our committee will have 45 days to review and revise that iteration. The committee can expect that the final version back from E-Code will be back to us by mid-April so that it has sufficient time to include it in the May 2023 annual town meeting warrant. Then moving on to the, Sierra Simmons and Janet Kane attended a meeting as we posed some questions regarding the Affordable Housing Trust draft bylaw at a previous meeting, and fortunately it all passed for this evening, so we're grateful for that. The committee also reviewed and revised a proposed draft of a bylaw that will require all town-owned vehicles to be marked with the town insignia, and that's on tonight's agenda a little bit further down. Since our recent bylaw meeting, we received notification from the Attorney General's office that the bylaws that were passed at the June 2022 annual town meeting were approved. They include numbering buildings, naming of public buildings and structures, soliciting and canvassing, and then the deletion of fees to town treasury, solid waste and landfill, and commercial ID stickers for landfills. So that's a pretty good track record and a good turnaround time. But despite their approval of the soliciting and canvassing, they had several comments that they have asked that we seek our legal counsel advice before we post this bylaw on soliciting and canvassing. So that will be taking up.
We will not need to seek legal counsel's opinion before posting. They are passed.
They did, this is what I don't understand. They approved it,
Right.
and yet they had some comments, and their direction to us, or their advice to us, was to seek legal counsel.
We will seek legal counsel, however, those bylaws, new and amended,
Okay.
will go into effect as soon as,
As they're received.
as soon as they are posted on the town website or any other designated place, but they have to be posted and advertised.
Okay. All right. Now, the Norris School Committee took a break over the summer, and they're having their back-to-school board meeting tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, right here in this room. And then finally, the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, the shared HR feasibility study that I have talked about probably 6 months ago. And after a very long delay, I'm happy to say that they've just released the final draft of the report of its study to determine the feasibility of shared human resources service in this region. The report is authorized by the UMass Collins Center and has been disseminated to all the participating towns, of which obviously Southampton is one of them. A group discussion of the report and its contents is scheduled for September 19th, and after that, I hope I can deliver the content of that information and hope for what we desperately need in the way of human resources expertise in town here. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about it?
Sure.
You talked about the E360, and that after like January, February, they'll be taking all the bylaws, there'll be a draft. And you mentioned that they will be a different iteration of the bylaws.
Right.
But they've already been approved by town meeting, they've already been approved by our legal team, so.
I guess we're talking more about format, cross-referencing, how they're integrating our responses to some of their questions. No, they're not going to change any of the content.
Okay.
Okay, it's just more in terms of clarity, comprehensibility by readers, and the organization of it all. And we're going through it, and the planning committee is going through the same exercise with E360.
So what will the voters approve then? What will they be approving in May?
I guess the final look through. The content, as I said, is not going to change. How people are able to access it and use it, I've asked for their assistance in coming in and presenting it, because I think it's a really maybe a very complicated
We're not going to spend a lot of legal funds to have this entire thing reviewed.
No, we don't have to go back to the attorneys,
Okay,
but
that's
we
good.
do have to get.
What they're going to do is they're going to reorganize it.
Right.
So if you're used to Article 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and going down, it may come out that it's now 7, 13,
Yeah.
4,
Yeah, okay.
1, type of thing.
They took it, and they've been quite successful with other towns. If you look at other towns in their bylaws, you can see how comprehensive and comprehensible they are, just by virtue of the way they're organized, and they really cite in some bylaws where else they might find confirmation of that information, or where that same subject may appear later on in another article of the bylaw.
And the online version will have hyperlinks, so you can just
Right.
click down and it'll take you right
Okay,
there.
I just want to see what approval.
Can I just add and ask as well? I'm Cindy Palmer, and I'm also on the planning board, and we're doing review of zoning bylaws. And E-code has been very highly recommended. The current consultant to the planning board was formerly the planner at the town of South Hadley, and he really speaks highly of the E-code process. But secondly, we've seen some of the drafts they've done. I don't think it's final. And essentially, it's kind of like formatting, making sure you use this word, which sort of means the same thing as this word, but it's not the same word. Why can't we be consistent here? Those kinds of simple corrections. But more, I have a question. What did the consultant say was the next step, and has that person communicated with Chairperson of Planning Board, Paul Deeman, regarding what's going on next? as far as the planning board's review.
Well, if you met your deadline of getting your responses.
I believe we
back,
did, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Then I assume they should be, Lucy knows best about that scheduling, so I
okay.
talked with her.
All right.
But yeah, they'll get back to you, see, discuss the process with you and what your committee's responsibilities are
Okay.
to get it to the next level.
Okay, good. I'll keep that
But
in mind at our
I never
next
thought when we
meeting.
signed on to this that this was going to take like a year and a half to 2
Yeah.
years just to bring it forward.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Maureen?
Okay, CPC hasn't met. Virginia Ahart gave a report, no meeting plan. Public Safety Building Committee met yesterday, finalized the RFQ for the Public Safety Building feasibility study, and their next meeting is a requested meeting with the Select Board on the 27th of September to review the RFQ before sending it out. The COA Building Feasibility Committee you heard tonight, and the next meeting, like Janet said, would be in October. COA hasn't met. Their next meeting is October 5th. And Board of Assessors met last week. They're doing the work of the office. Again, like I mentioned, they're hoping for a PA position and also a Board of Assessors member. And just wanted to say thank you to April West for the time that she served on the assessors. She's been very valuable in many, many ways, and we're going to miss her. So the next meeting of the Board of Assessors is the 20th of September.
Thank you. Joy?
Sure. Southampton Housing Authority met last night. They discussed the housing trust bylaw, which we'll discuss later, and they're moving forward with the purchase of the property. I believe the offer was accepted, and they are also looking for new members. Their next, there's also a MHP meeting to discuss the bylaw September 21st, and their next meeting for the Housing Authority is October 3rd. Conservation Committee hasn't met, but their next meeting is September 19th. Planning Board hasn't met, but their next meeting is September 21st. And Open Space met, but Cindy went over most of everything we went in last meeting. Their next meeting is October 13th.
Okay. In the past 2 weeks, Finance, Capital, Greenway, Community, and PPP have not met. And Edward, Town Administrator's report.
Certainly. Thank you. Bradley Oxon and I have been working with the auditors regarding some follow-up questions they had for the fiscal year 2021 audit. I believe we've answered all of those now, so I will follow up and see if there's any other questions which they have, which they need answers to. A reminder, if anyone knows of any community service projects for the two young Southampton ladies who attend our Hampshire Regional High School, they are both looking for 30 hours of community service projects to perform, and they'd like to get it done during the month of September. If you have any thoughts or ideas, please let me know. Lucy Dalton, Town Clerk, has forwarded the Attorney General's approval and comments from the bylaw amendments and the new bylaws approved at the June 2022 annual town meeting. These bylaw amendments and new bylaws will go into effect when they are posted on the town website and any other designated places. And then, yes, we should work with Town Council after that to find out if there are any edits that need to be made to the ones that they commented on in the future. As a follow-up to a question from a few select board meetings ago, I did ask Final Site if we would be able to sign and enter into a 3-year contract for web services and then take it to a town meeting at a future date in the next 4 months approximately for consideration of a 5-year contract approval. And if approved, would Final Site be willing to switch us to a 5-year contract at that point? They have gotten back to me and they would not be able to do that. So our options are move forward with the 3-year contract at this point in time with a little higher annual support cost, or wait a few months until there is a special town meeting to look for approval of a 5-year contract. The Conservation Commission has received a couple of applications for the conservation agent position and is preparing to set up a subcommittee for the interview process. I will help them and be joining them through this process. A reminder that Barbara Golden's last day of work before her retirement is this Thursday, September 15th. They are having a little send-off reception for her on Thursday between 3 and 5 p.m. at the Edwards Library. If you have time to stop in and wish her well, I am sure Barbara would be delighted to see you. And I did include the little flyer that they sent out on that, along with the report. The Public Safety Building Committee has asked for a joint meeting with the Select Board for the September 27th meeting so that they may present their RFQ for a feasibility study for services to the Select Board for your approval. Johnson Controls will be at the Town Hall on this Thursday, September 15th, to perform the annual test for the fire sprinkler and alarm system. And just to let you know, the gutters were cleaned and seams retaped last week, and the gutters on both sides of the Council on Aging wing of the building were refastened and rehung. Members of the Conservation Commission and I met on a pre-construction meeting with the contractor who will be performing the Manhan Meadow Sanctuary Trail reconstruction work last Thursday. The meeting and tour of the trails went well, and the contractor will be beginning that work on October 3rd. Chris Fowles and I would like to request permission to write letters of support and apply for a sign/lines grant for 2 new crosswalks and signage on Pomeroy Meadow Road near the Norris School. This grant would be for approximately $6,000 from Mass DOT. And then upcoming Select Board meetings September 27th and Select Board meetings for October to be determined.
All right. So it looks like D, G, and J, you're asking for direction from us. Besides those 3, any questions on anything else that's on there?
Yeah, I'm just wondering how much outreach has been done. I'd hate to turn away these high school students who want to do some community service, and I'm just wondering if anything has gone out to, like, the chairs of open space or conservation, the library.
Thinking that would, like, I know there's trails that need cleanup and marking. I don't know
Yeah.
if that, I could do that with them. I've been out there.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help too.
Yeah.
If, so who is the contact person for the students themselves?
You?
Me, and then I do have their names, so, yeah. If you,
Okay, I just hate to turn them away, and I'm sure that between the library and the COA and trails, I'd hate to just not respond to the request for community
I did
service.
announce it at the last department heads meeting, so, and I will do so again this Thursday. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm happy to reach out to, well, open space, they've just left, but, like, open space.
Yeah, I'll reach out to the chair for
Okay, well, just let me know.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help if, to set up even, we can split and help them do some
Great.
trail stuff.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah, am I correct? All the 30 hours have to be completed in the month of September?
They're trying to get them completed in the month of September, yes.
Oh, that's
They
a one
seniors.
time, okay.
I had another question also. What was it? Oh, as far as number J, I know there's a
Yep.
motion about that, but is that a crosswalk that would be crossing right around Gun Road Extension in Pomeroy? And then across Pomeroy, do you know?
Ian, along with Randall and the Grants Committee, were working on a couple of possible locations.
Okay.
Yeah, there are currently 3 cross streets, and I'm not going to remember their names, that do have children that attend the school. That they would like to make it a little safer way. And then actually some of the residents themselves have made it public that they're having issues trying to get across Pomeroy Meadow Road.
I even noticed the new ones on Route 10 are already fading. They get a lot of traffic. The new ones when the road was done. I'll make a motion to support the grant for signs, lines from Mass DOT for 2 crosswalks at the total of $6,000 for that to be.
And authorize the town administrator and chair to sign.
Yep.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Francine. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
Letter D. Do we want to do anything with that? Do we either sign the 3-year or we hold off for 4 months, give or take, and request for the 5? Correct? That's what you're asking, one or the other?
Correct.
What's the direction? Discussion?
Did they give you a start date?
They can start whenever. So, like I say, the question is, do we do the 3 years and it's $250 a year more than the 5-year, or do we wait 3 or 4 months for the special town meeting and put the 5-year contract on that for approval?
Honestly.
It ties us in for a lesser amount for 5 years rather than, like I say,
Yeah,
more for 3.
the difference would be about $750, if I remember our last
Over
discussion.
3 years.
For 3 years, yeah.
Right, and then,
$750 more.
and then you have to say if we continue in the 4th year, if we renew for whether it's 3 or 5, has it, gone up? So,
Yeah.
like I say, over a 5-year period, and it does have
And the funding
potential to be
source
more
for
than
this,
750.
we designated ARPA, correct?
ARPA,
Yeah.
correct, ARPA funds.
Were there any technology funds in the operating budget for website?
Well, don't forget, until we switch over, we are still paying for
Right,
that.
right.
And the monthly contracted cost, if we stay at or under the 2 hours, which the contract calls for, is $180. When to go over that, trying to remember, 30, I think it's $120 an hour if we go over that. For example, the invoice I just got was $404.
Well, I'm kind of torn because, the phones are taking forever, I think, and, are we going to, is it going to happen right away if we say, yes, we'll go ahead and pay the extra $750 over 3 years? Is it going to happen, or is it going to end up being December, January before anything happens anyway?
Well, it's going to
That's what I
take,
asked.
well, from whatever the start point is, it'll take approximately 4 or 5 months.
What, to actually get it up and running, or?
Correct, to
What will happen in the first-
redesign it and then to get it up and running.
Okay.
So I know it's $250 annually, but I'm more in favor of the shorter term, in case they fail miserably.
You mean the
We
3
can-
year?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we can make a
me
switch
too.
versus going out to 5 years, so.
So it's just a matter of whether, do we just, then in that case, then we would not have to have a town meeting warn about it, then.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
We'd have to
Yeah,
probably vote to increase the ARPA.
No, I don't, I thought we had,
ARPA track.
I'm going to have to go back and look at that. I thought we had put like 16,000 or 17,000 into that project. I could be wrong.
but through this period, we'll continue to have the same web person until they complete it.
Until they
'Cause I
complete it.
was saying, can we
Correct.
find any savings, and we can't.
Right.
So we'll be doing, all right.
Well, I think the sooner the better.
Still, it's a negligible amount of money.
So is there a motion to approve the 3-year contract with Final Site with the funding source to be ARPA? And we'll just leave it at that for now?
Yeah,
And
so
then just
moved.
start later?
Yep.
There's a motion made by
I'll second
Maureen,
it.
seconded by Francine. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Then, looks like letter G. Public Safety Building Committee has asked for a joint meeting with Select Board for September 27th, where they may present their RFQ feasibility study. Any reason for us not to grant that?
Yeah, I think that the chair was going to send a letter to both Ed and Chris about that, to ask to be on the agenda. And as you remember, the ARPA 75,000 was already approved for the funding for that. So I don't think we have to have a motion, it was just to be on the agenda for the 27th.
Right. So go ahead and put it on the agenda for the 27th. Okay?
Thank you.
We're going to skip the ad hoc grant committee. Next, we have resignation of April West Board of Assessors effective September 19, 2022, and there's a letter included in the packet to the town clerk. I am regretfully giving my notice of resignation from the Board of Assessors as of September 19, 2022. I have truly enjoyed working with the great people in the town hall who worked so hard for Southampton. I hope that the assessor's position is filled soon with a great candidate. Thank you all for your help and support you have given through my tenure on the Board of Assessors. Sincerely, April West.
Okay.
Is there a motion to accept that?
I move to accept
I'll second
April
it.
West's resignation.
Motion made by Francine, seconded by Maureen. Discussion? Hearing Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next, we have a letter of resignation from James
Palermo.
Palermo, thank you, Library Board of Trustees. Dear Mrs. Dalton, please be advised that I find it necessary to resign at this time from my elected position as library trustee, which expires officially in 2023. It has been an honor and privilege to have served in the past 2 years with the dedicated and hardworking trustees who love Edwards Library and regard it as essential to the town's quality of life. Is there a motion to accept that?
I'll move to accept Jim Palermo's resignation from the Library Board of Trustees.
Second.
Seconded, motion made by Francine, seconded by Joy. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Next, we have, looks like an appointment to the Greenway Committee for Janet Brown. Please accept my thanks and consideration as a member of the Greenway Committee. I feel strongly that our town needs a bikeway/greenway so our citizens can enjoy the beauty of our town and get great exercise at the same time. To reiterate my comments on the application, my special interest is to assist the town in providing a bikeway for its citizens. I think it is very important to connect the path from Westfield all the way to Amherst. With gas prices as they are today, any other mode of transportation than an automobile should be encouraged and developed. It is also a great advantage to the students of several colleges along the way. I worked for a landscaping architect for 20 years and am quite aware of the importance of providing outlets for citizens to exercise and enjoy the outdoors. I'm a member of the Open Space Committee and Committee Preservation Committee. Would like to be part of this project and see if it go forward for our citizens, young and old. This is a super project for our town and will benefit from it greatly. Sincerely, or thank you for your opportunity. Sincerely, Janet Brown, who is a resident.
And with us right now.
Hello. A resident on High Street in Southampton.
I'll make a motion to appoint Janet Brown to the Greenway Committee, term to expire 2020.
Could probably make it 23, 24, 25. Here's what we currently have. There's 80.
It was blank. The last letter was blank.
Yeah, at the time that I tried to fill this in, I couldn't access the committee list, so I just kind of filled in the 3 numbers that I did know.
Would you like a 1, 2, or 3?
Yeah.
3. All right, term to expire in 2025.
25. Yeah, because currently the committee, there's 1 at 23, there's 2 at 24, and there's still 4 upon completion that we'll have to convert to a term.
Yeah.
Yep, that's there's a motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Maureen, seconded by Joy. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks,
Opposed?
Janet.
None.
Thank you,
Good
Janet.
night.
Good night, Janet.
And next, we have a Terry Ann Hoog Pignatare, Open Space Committee, term to expire June 30th, 2025. And we have an application. She is a resident on Cook Road.
And technically,
Southampton.
and technically you could do 23, 24, or 25, because one of the trips I made out, now that I can access the list, is I do not see any listing for a committee member at large currently. So if we're going to stagger the terms, they're going to be 3 years, but you're going to start to stagger them. It could be 1 year, 2 year, or 3 years.
What's the committee's desire? If anything.
I would think the longer the better.
Yeah.
There's less turnover.
Long and then go down.
So I'll make a motion to appoint Terry Ann Hoag Pignatare, okay, as a member of the Open Space Committee, effective immediately until 2025.
A second.
Motion made by Francine, seconded by Joy. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None.
I just look back and it looks like we approved $15,125 of ARPA funds.
So we should have plenty.
Yeah, because there'll be remaining funds on the operating side too, because at the rate of the contract, it won't be enough for a full year.
Well, actually, yeah, because 1 full year, it will be $5,750. Don't know if there'll be any left in that. I mean,
Okay.
the committee could even choose to, say, fund the second year out of the annual support costs from the
Okay.
ARPA for what we've already got there, so.
Okay.
Moving on to new business, license for right of entry, Pioneer Valley Railroad right-of-way.
Correct. Our target date is still to close and actually acquire the right-of-way by December 31st, 2022. However, we have two things going on. We're looking to enter into a design contract for the bicycle pedestrian path itself, and the Conservation Commission currently has the Manhan Meadows Sanctuary Trail Restoration Project, which once we own the right-of-way, the idea was to bring the trail out onto, rather than having the entrance where it currently is, right on East Street, to be on the right-of-way of the rail trail. Also, there's a matter of storage of materials for that particular program. So I had reached out to our attorney, who reached out to the railroad attorney, and the two of them have drafted this license for the right of entry, which would allow both of those items to occur before we actually own the right-of-way outright.
Any discussion?
I have two questions about it. Under number 1, where it says acknowledgement of permitted use, it says, "This agreement shall be in effect from September 15th until December 31st, 2022. Why such a short period of time?
We are supposed to own it, the right-of-way
As before
as
then.
of
So this is
December
only
31st.
until then? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other one is, we're required to carry $2 million of insurance, liability insurance. So how will that be funded?
That will be covered under our existing Maya
We probably already have the
contract.
coverage in place, right?
What's that?
We already have the
Coverage goes
coverage
up
in
to $2
place. You're just
million?
going to issue a COI?
Correct. No, we already have more.
More than $2 million?
More than $2 million,
Okay.
correct.
All right, thanks.
Other discussion?
No.
Is there a motion?
I move to approve the indemnification agreement with Pioneer Valley Railroad Company, including the right of entry.
I'll second it.
There's a motion made by Francine, seconded by Maureen. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. Next, we have Weights and Measure Services contract, or letter from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for fiscal year 2023 with a corresponding contract.
Correct. And until this point in time, from some time before I arrived here, the town has contracted with the state of Massachusetts to do our weights and measures work. It has been a flat fee of $1,500 up until this point in time. So now you will see from that letter and contract that I think it will be going up to $4,462 to perform those services. And if you look in your package, you will see, and now I know it's 2,000 and some odd dollars. The flip side of that is that, you know, currently at our current rates, this past year, what we took in was
$522.
Yeah, exactly. So it does, and I will say one of the caveats of this is you never know when the state is actually going to do those weights and measures, whether you call them tests, inspections, what have you. So, and actually some cases, some of the actual test dates have been in a previous fiscal year, but they still are allowed to bill us. So like this past year, for whatever reason, Pooz's was in the previous fiscal year, not this past fiscal year, and it'll probably catch up again in the next one, and probably might even have two that get staggered out. So, but basically our fees are probably a little more over half of what the new cost will be. So to move forward, number one, we have to sign the agreement with the state to continue the service. Number two is we're going to have to take a look at our existing weights and measure fees and increase those.
So could you just expand on what is the process for us to adjust our fees? Is there a public hearing?
There would be a public hearing involved, correct, that go along with that. And then, we would take a look at what the current fees are for each type of service, take a look at what the cost going forward is going to be, and try to come up with a schedule that we present in that public hearing, and then the select board would have to vote to implement that new fee structure. And, then basically we're supposed to, if we put it on the
town meeting vote?
No, it does not.
Maureen?
Two things. One is, what's the advantage of having the state do it versus hiring a private contractor? And secondly, who sends out the bills for the charges for to the businesses?
Those are done through our office.
Through town administrator office?
Yes, Judy actually sends, once we get the information from the state, she sends out the invoices to the businesces.
Is there an advantage by having the state do it? Is it generally cheaper? Is it anything that makes it better?
We would, the other alternative would be if we wanted to hire our own person to do it, but you also have to buy all the equipment, which is going to be extremely much more expensive, or try to partner with another community that already has a weights and measures inspector, which is probably going to be more than the state providing the service to us.
Well, I think we have to cover our costs. So if it's the state, then I just think we have to have a hearing and go through the process.
Right.
Can I ask another question about this? I'm looking at the businesses that are paying for this service, and I'm wondering why the liquor stores and like Anytime Fitness isn't on this. So I'm assuming it's scanners, like people purchase things at the stores. So why are liquor stores exempt? We have two or three liquor stores. I don't see them on here. Southampton Liquors.
Well, I don't think it's a scanner like a hand scan for the barcode.
What's the scanner?
It's weights and measures, but a scale.
No, I think it actually, now that scanners are so popular, that it does get into scanning.
But O'Reilly Auto Parts have scanners, and they're on here, and they're being charged $150.
But they also have scales too. So I will follow up with the state.
They
didn't list scales. They only said scanners.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think that, it seems like we don't have it's not inclusive, I don't think. The businesses that have.
Why have scanners?
That might use some sort of a scan process for purchasing or wait.
And it might be, again, certain categories that get scanned. But I will follow up with the state and find that out.
I think the liquor store was the one that came immediately to mind.
So they're looking for this to take effect on January 1st, 2023. So between now and then, they're going to continue to provide the service. That's when our existing contract expires, is December 30th.
I'd have to go back and find the existing contract, but that would be what I would believe from this. Of course, on the flip side of that is they don't bill us usually until, if we're lucky, May and sometimes June, the end of the fiscal year, which would, be after January 1st, 2023.
You think that the state would line it up with the fiscal year?
Yeah. And when these receipts come in, do we put them into the revolving account so they sit there to pay this bill when it comes up?
Yes, it is a revolving fund. You're absolutely correct, John.
Right. So I don't know what the committee's thinking, but I think I don't think we're going to find anybody to do it for this
Yeah.
amount of money or less. And so I think we should move forward, but between now and when this contract takes effect, we should give direction to adjust how our costs. First, clarify, is anybody missing from this list that should be charged, so we can have a true and accurate picture? And two, what do our fees need to be to be able to anticipate collection of 110% of this contract? Enough to cover it with 10% administrative fee. I'll make that a motion. Approve the contract effective January 1st, 2023, with the caveat that between now and then, we do a study and have a vote of the select board if we deem so to adjust our cost effective January 1st, so they collide.
I'll second.
There's a motion made by myself, seconded by Joy. Discussion?
Well, we're not including like I think we have to cover the cost and postage or anything else involved, but
That's what it said,
you
110%.
didn't,
That's where you said
Okay.
110%.
So that'd be $500.
yeah.
Yep.
Sounds good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Thank you.
Yep. Just for clarification, Ed, because that contract only has one spot, should we modify the motion to authorize the town administrator to sign on behalf of the select board?
I'm fine with that.
I would probably modify it to say.
Have the chair
The
sign?
chair,
All right, so
or the acting chair.
yep. Modify the motion to authorize the chair or their designee to sign that contract. No objections?
Nope.
Okay. Animal Control Westfield Intermunicipal Agreement, this is the second reading, or is this one modified?
No, it's the same. There hasn't been any changes. I didn't know if you had any other comments on it from the last meeting. I've still got to sit down with Ian and go over his comments and the draft to get his comments back to the city of Westfield.
So do you want us to take this up, or it's not ready for us to act on?
Well, I mean, if you've got any other comments or changes you want, it's a good opportunity to do it. If not, we can wait till the next meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to see what Ian has to say.
Okay. Number 3, it says for a term up to 5 years. So is that something we have to get approval at town meeting for?
No, basically what they do is.
Municipal agreement, it's not a. Okay,
Yeah, it's an intermunicipal agreement.
Okay, right, I remember that now.
Yeah, and basically what you do, you approve it, but then each year, you're actually approving another year of amendment to it, so.
Okay, and then F, at the end of the 7-day mandatory hold period. So that means that all animals would be held for a 7-day period?
I think it
Or is
means
that if
that,
it means if they're not vaccinated?
believe it means if they're not vaccinated or picked up.
Okay, because I think we talked about in the past, and that's kind of a hardship for, if the animal was picked up, but they are all up to date, to just hold them for 7 days seemed like a lot. So I'm hoping that just has to do with someone that they can't confirm vaccination records. That was all I had, really.
I mean, I echo Francine and be interested if the police chief has any additional thoughts on this, but I think it's fair charging 60 cents per resident. I mean, it's a simple calculation, and we're not going to be able to do this on our own. So I see our hands are tied.
All right.
Okay. Open Space Committee, amended charge.
We already did that.
Correct, all right. DOER, Green Community Grant, see attachment.
Yes, and there's 3 attachments
Yep.
in your package.
One for the town hall, police station, and library?
Correct. And I'm still waiting on, and these are all basically electrical. I'm still waiting on mechanical ones for the highway garage. the school for their controls for their HVAC system, and then one for on the streetlights, of changing them to LEDs.
I thought the school was done, or is this a different?
What's that?
I thought the school was done. I thought Norris
The
was
electrical
done.
portion was done, but we asked to have the...
Mechanicals of the HV?
Yes.
Okay, so this is just informational purposes?
Well, it's like I say, it's the start here. These are the three proposals on, like you say, the town hall, the library, and the police station. You can take a look at them to see what the energy savings are. My advice is probably we shouldn't make any decisions until we've got the other three in, just in case. Okay, is it going to be more than the $138,000 we have to allocate, so we can look at and say, okay, let's prioritize them by the energy savings, because our goal is still to save 20% of the utilization.
Right. And do you have an anticipated timeline on when those other submittals will be in, 30 days? 40 days?
He's trying to get back to me as soon as he can. I'm hoping that we'll have him back for the meeting on the 27th.
Okay.
It's just that when you get into the mechanicals, it takes longer for their engineering division to take a look at them. It's not as simple as calculations as the energy savings and the electrical lighting.
Okay.
We were designated green community and actually received this grant, which isn't really a grant. You have to show savings of up to that $138,000 before you actually get it, right?
Well, we've got the $138,000 that we can use towards projects like this. I mean, fortunately, the first one we did was the Norris School on the electrical side, and really it was a wash.
Yeah, it didn't cost us anything, right?
The rebates basically paid for the job. That usually isn't the case. Usually you have to allocate some money, which that $138,000 we will utilize portions over all of for some of these. Once you have done that, once you have reached your 20% required savings from the base year, then you're eligible to put in every year for additional grant monies.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's been at least 3 years since we were originally awarded this, so I think, the sooner we can keep this ball rolling, the better.
Yeah.
I think all these things should happen, frankly. I mean, I think this is incredibly good data around savings. I mean, we'll have to discuss about the police department, given that we may not be using it in the same way, but, I mean, all of these are electrically are really good energy-saving
Absolutely.
projects.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to table that, move that to under old business with hopes to take it up on September 27th.
Okay.
Bylaw drafts, marking of municipal town-owned vehicles. Francine,
Well, since
you want to go out of
Sierra's
order?
here, could we just reverse the order?
Sure. We'll take up Affordable Housing Trust.
Yes,
Are you
thank you.
expecting anybody else from your committee? No. Okay.
That would be
Would
a
you like to
quorum.
speak on it?
Sure.
Sorry,
You need to come
for the
up here.
recording.
This is my first
Name-
select board meeting here.
Name, address, or committee relation.
Okay. Hi. Does that work? Okay. I'm Sierra Simmons from 242 College Highway. I'm on the Housing Authority. And we put together this Affordable Housing Trust bylaw. So an affordable housing trust is considered one of the best ways to move forward in our goal of increasing the number of affordable housing units there are in the town. This was identified in our housing production plan as a priority. It's been just a major priority for the housing trust. And we've been working with MHP as a consultant to help put this together. And so it's based on the state statute. And we also took some advice and ideas from other local towns that have affordable housing trust bylaws. We brought this to the bylaw review committee. They had some questions. We brought those back to our consultant. She answered them, and then we made another draft. And so the bylaw review committee suggested we bring it in front of the select board to get it moving on to the next step.
Okay. Discussion?
So there are parts of it that are open-ended because drafting it, we just kind of wanted to know where the select board wanted to go. For example, I think this is the only one that I remember, or that there is, but we mentioned adding one of the members to the Board of Trustee, the town manager or town administrator, as an additional member or chair of the board, with or without the power to vote. So that's very vague. So something that we're looking for the select board, what kind of language they would like to see in regards to the town administrator's presence on the Board of Trustees.
I have a number of things, but if other people have questions, I'm happy to.
Sir, is there any feedback on the question Joy posed?
Yeah, I actually, like I said earlier, I think that it should be an ex officio member or not a voting member because of the high probability of receiving funds from the Community Preservation Committee.
Well, I can make it even easier on you because we have a current bylaw, the town administrator bylaw, that prevents me from being a voting member of any committee.
Okay.
So,
That would,
Okay.
So we would just adjust it in accordance with the existing bylaw.
Yes, we can make that change.
Maureen?
so this actually, first of all, I'm glad it's finally coming to Housing Trust because I know it's been working on for a long time. And I think this group of people on housing are probably making a lot more advances between the land purchase and the Housing Trust. It's got a lot of momentum, so I'm grateful for that. This trustee group is also a very powerful group in terms of what's allowed for not being elected. So you're basically appointed by the select board, and then you're allowed to do a tremendous amount, which other committees are never able to do. And I get the reason for that is that you need to move quickly without having to wait for town meeting and wait for this and that. So I think it's just really important that this gets done right. That's because it says, I'll just, for example, E, it says, employ advisors and agents such as accountants, appraisers, and lawyers. So I just wanted, is that something that, how would that be paid for, I guess is the main thing? Would that be part of the?
Everything would be paid for from the funds
trust?
of the trust.
Okay, so it wouldn't be in our budget, right? It would be
No.
totally separate. And then similarly, you will have the authority to borrow money, and that would be K, on such terms and conditions and from such sources as the board deems advisable to mortgage and pledge trust assets as collateral. So similarly, you would be borrowing it as a trustee group, and it wouldn't in any way be through the town. It
Well,
would all
that
be
was
separate.
that was one of the questions that the bylaw review committee brought up, and our consultant recommended that we consult the legal team. So we figured we should highlight that when this goes through legal as like a question that they should look into.
Okay.
Yeah, we asked the question about liability. In the you know, if anyone defaults.
Okay, and then 10, it says the trust is exempt from Mass General Law, Chapter 59 and 62, and from any other provisions concerning payment of taxes. So
I'm sorry, what letter are we?
I'm looking at 10.
Number 10.
The trust is exempt from Mass General Law, and then it says, so this trustee is, you're exempt from paying any taxes, correct?
Yes, which is the norm for trusts.
Okay. And then it says the books and records of the trust shall be audited annually. Again, it's going to be paid for by the trust, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, those are just the questions I have.
Okay. So coming back to this,
So my question on this is more for when it goes to legal, is in the event, in the highly unlikely event of a default, what is the exposure of the town? Is the town guaranteeing? I don't think so, but I would want that clarified.
yeah, that was a question. And then that's why it should go to legal before
Yeah.
and we're on a short, I mean, in order to keep up with this momentum and in order to move this thing along to meet, I think, the timelines that the committee is looking for, we would need to get this to the lawyers pretty quickly.
So would we just need to make that one change? And there's like little typo things that I wanted to change too. And send it off to legal to inquire about that term?
if that's what the board wants to do, yes.
I don't know do you feel a need to bring any of this back to the committee before this draft goes to legal? I mean, is this, for all intents and purposes, a final draft?
Yeah, other than those slight changes, I mean, I'm here in case you guys had any strong lingering questions that I could bring. We're meeting with Shelley from MHP next week, so if you have any questions for her, I can ask her. But we've, taken this to the point that we can.
We've sent this to MHP, correct, for the
Yes.
review?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
So just to revisit the first part of that again. Okay, so the Housing Authority, I believe it was the committee, went to CPC and filled out an application and requested funds from CPC on the housing bucket to purchase or to buy land. And the town meeting, thankfully, nobody stepped in the meantime. The town meeting approved it.
Right.
And then you're hopefully very close to actually purchasing the land for the purposes of affordable housing, which is great. How will the trust, let's say that scenario happens again, what role will the trust play, if anything? Would it still be the Housing Authority that would go and look for, because the funds traditionally in Southampton, with the 20-year history we just heard of, the most number of funds that keep piling up is the Housing Authority funds. So under the scenario I just gave, what role, if any, would the Housing Trust play?
I mean, if you want to add something, Joy, but.
I believe that the Housing Trust can go to CPA before anything happens. As soon as they're established, they can go to CPC and request the Affordable Housing Fund, so they're transferred over to the trust.
Without a project.
Yes.
Yes, so then you have, without a project, so then you have that just one initial town meeting vote saying, yes, we're allowing our CPC funds going to the Housing Trust. And then the Housing Trust can.
And they can do the negotiating, everything that the Housing Authority did, they would do that instead. So finding the property,
and they can do it
negotiating.
immediately without having to go back to town meeting.
Yeah.
So if they have, say, I think it's like 400,000 now in
Something like that,
CPC
a
funds.
little more than that.
And they do a town meeting, next year to get those funds to the Housing Trust, say, in I don't know how many other years, once the CPC has replenished affordable housing funds, they can go back to CPC. So instead of every time there's a project, they have to go to town meeting, they're doing it every 10 years or so.
Right, and we still have to report back to the CPC every year, or every time.
I would just recommend that it say Southampton residents. Because if the trust is going directly to CPC, which is funded out of a surcharge from people's taxes, so the second line, for qualified Southampton residents.
Okay.
Because I really do think, wasn't that long ago that we had a citizen's petition to reduce the percentage of CPC from 3% to 1%. So I think that people are very aware of these funds coming right out of their own taxes, or surcharge of their taxes.
So Joy, are you, sorry if this is, I don't know if this is a question I can ask, are you thinking that you will make these edits and send it to legal? Okay, do you have the editable Word version that's most recent? If not, I can send that to you.
I believe so. If not, you can
I'll just make sure.
send me what you have.
I will.
I can't be that different than what we already were working
About the
from.
TA.
There was a couple changes and rearranges from the first draft.
In other communities that have this in place, I don't know who knows this answer, if anybody does. Is this more of like following the concept of an enterprise? Where they're operating, there's a trust under our tax ID number, but they're a separate entity? Or they actually get their own, most trusts get their own tax ID number, right?
They get their own.
So we don't have to worry about where they can employ advisors and agents if they end up hiring a director? That's
Right.
This would be a good
Much like
MHP question.
Right now, we have a very strange relationship with our housing authority because housing authority does not have any property or whatever. So believe it or not, I had a roughly 20 to 30-minute conversation with our town council when we were starting the process of actually procuring the property up College Highway because she's so used to, she goes, well, I represent the town, I can't represent the housing authority. I goes, it's okay. I goes, right now, they're really not like a housing authority. They're just like another one of our boards and committees. So, but eventually, if they were successful in doing projects
They become
like
their own
this,
governmental
they become their own governmental agency, correct?
Okay.
Okay. Other
The only
discussion?
change we're making here is that the town administrator will be on the board without the power to vote.
May be on the board as an ex officio.
It specifies
Without the
Southampton
power to
residents.
vote, in accordance with existing bylaw.
And everything else, the questions go to legal.
Right, and paragraph 1 adds Southampton residents.
Yes, and I will ask Shelley about that question with the tax ID, and just for more clarification, I'll email you all.
Do we need a vote to move forward?
Do we just have to be aware of what's going to legal, or do we actually have to vote to send it to legal?
We have to vote it, it's under our
Okay.
Sierra,
jurisdiction.
what is your timeline on,
To
getting
make it
this in
onto the
place
next
so that-
special
Yeah, we're
town
hoping to
meeting.
get into the special town meeting
Okay,
for this.
so- There we go.
I'll make a motion then to approve the draft with the 2 edits that were made, and this draft is to bylaw regarding the housing trust.
I'll second it. Oh, thank you.
There's a motion made by Maureen, seconded by Joy. Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marking of municipal vehicles.
Okay, it's very short compared to every other article in our bylaws, and it's kind of a breath of fresh air, if I could say that. It's very straightforward, and for people at home, I'll read proposed bylaw for marking town-owned vehicles. And it reads, "The town-owned vehicles, excluding police department vehicles that are specially designated by the select board, shall be appropriately marked with the name of Southampton, together with the town insignia and name of the department on both sides of the vehicle. This requirement also applies to smaller town-owned motorcycles, ATVs, etc., which shall be marked Town of Southampton only." Not only, but just Town of Southampton, rather than having to include the insignia, for clarification. Each vehicle will be marked with appropriate and contrasting lettering that is highly visible and easily identifiable as a Southampton town-owned vehicle. End of bylaw.
I'll make a motion to approve the marking of town-owned vehicles
I'd like
bylaw.
to amend it, or
Okay, I'm
I'll make
just,
the motion, then we can
Yeah.
amend. So there's a motion made to
I'll
approve,
second it.
and there's seconded. Under discussion, I saw your hand, go ahead, Ed.
I was just going to, can you define insignia? Because
Seal.
I'd probably use town seal rather than insignia.
Okay. I'm fine with that, either
Yep.
one. With the town seal.
Yep,
It's that right here.
correct.
Which one?
Yep. And then I'd like to add a second paragraph. Shall take effect 45 days upon approval at either town meeting or special town meeting. So once it goes all the way through and it's approved, you got 45 days to get in compliance.
After, but this also has to
Or
go
upon acceptance, approval.
by the Attorney General.
Well, that's when it actually goes into effect,
Yeah.
when we get the
Yeah.
attorney, well, actually, once we get that back and we post it,
Right. Is when it
that's
goes into
when
effect.
it goes into effect. So I think what John's trying to say, if I can paraphrase it, is
I just don't want to leave it open-ended.
all town vehicles, all town-owned vehicles shall become in compliance with this bylaw 45 days after it goes into effect.
Yep.
Does that work?
Yep. It gives them a finite window to get, I don't want existing vehicles to wait until they're actually replaced.
Right.
Oh,
Existing unmarked fleet
okay.
needs to get in
All
compliance.
town-owned vehicles shall comply with this bylaw within 45 days of its
Posting?
posting.
Well, yeah, or it's going into effect.
Yep.
Because of its becoming effective, because it becomes effective as soon as it's posted or advertised.
Other discussion? So we have a motion on the floor, it's amended to specify town seal versus
Insignia.
insignia, and to add the paragraph, or the sentence about when it becomes effective. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Next, we have a list of, looks like an update to the ARPA tracker, adding an entry or an application that was received on September 7th by Good Eats To Go, project negative economic impact, amount requesting $24,495. Say we accept it and as a communication?
Yes.
All right, next, we have assistant town accountant update, if any.
Yes, and Bradley was successful in setting up a free Indeed account under his email, which is separate from the paid account, which is under my email. So the assistant town accountant position is posted on that. He's also reached out to the Massachusetts Auditors and Accounting Association and sent them the information, so it can be posted on that also.
Okay. Any questions on that? Fiscal year 2022 financial audit planning, next steps in the packet?
And in the packet, you will find 2 examples of requests for proposals. One I got from both came from other communities that the town administrator had sent me. The other one, I reached out to a community I used to work in, and that one is actually one I developed, but it is from another community. So pretty similar, might be set up a little bit differently, but pretty similar information that's in it. And then I was chuckling because I was actually looking for something else electronically, and over the weekend I actually found the one that was done for the town of Southampton back in, I think it was 2010 or something. So, and again, a little different formatting, but the information that was basically spelled out in it was similar, budget information, demographics, what have you.
Didn't we have one when we engaged that firm for 1 year?
What's that?
Didn't we have a contract that we used for?
It's not a contract. This is exempt.
Okay.
Auditing services are exempt from Massachusetts procurement laws, so you don't have to do it. You can go out and hire anyone you want, but the board has kind of put a and there's nothing wrong with doing it periodically. I'd never recommend doing it every 1 year or 3 years, but the board has asked to go down this way, and it is one way to see what types of firms may be out there and be willing to do it, and what their experience is.
So what would you recommend for next steps on this?
Well, if you've now seen what an RFP looks like, if you'd like me to, I will just update the information and develop one for the town of Southampton with our current information, and I'll bring it back at the next meeting.
Okay. To the next meeting, you said.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
You don't hear that out of me too often, but this one,
Already done it.
well, this one I understand the timelines and everything else, so
Okay.
I would like to get it done and at least out there.
Good.
All right.
That'd be
Thank
great.
you, Ed. Any other necessary business cannot await the next regular September 27th Select Board meeting?
Couple things.
Yes.
Are we going to approve the mechanic RF?
Well, that's
That's
further down.
next. That's
Oh, it's further down, okay.
your signatures.
Yeah.
The other thing is,
As long as the PPB chair has no,
okay, I didn't really see it. I didn't realize it was on
objections to us taking it out of order. I was just trying
Oh,
to
okay,
keep
there
it
it is,
moving
yeah.
forward, that's
here. I
all.
knew we had gotten paperwork on it. The other thing is at one point, we talked about how do we prevent lines from being overspent? And now we heard again tonight from Francine around the Board of Health. It's come up with departments being, short-staffed and hiring people. So is there a current mechanism in place, or can we talk about that at a future meeting to make sure that there's some sort of a stopgap around overspending accounts?
You can talk about it now, you can talk about a future meeting. I mean, you can just say, no, line items cannot be overspent. However, on the particular item you're talking about, I'm also going to turn around and say, okay, this is not in isolation. Please remember that the select board allowed the town accountant's position as a vendor to be overspent and deficit spent because they had a plan to get to the end of the year and transfer the funds. Same thing occurred, and the select board allowed the assessors to do the same thing. But again, they had a plan. They reached out, in both cases, reached out to Finance Committee and the Select Board and said, okay, we're in a spot. We have services we have to provide. If we bring in a vendor, we don't have it in a total amount in our expense account. However, we have normally a paid employee position that is filled, that we're not going to be, until we fill it, be drawing monies from. So, here's our plan. Right now, we think it's going to cost X amount of dollars. So we will not spend that X amount of dollars out of this account, and as soon as, in this particular case, at this time of year, I'd probably say, as soon as a special town meeting comes up, we would request to have an article put on that special town meeting to transfer the funds from wage account or salary account to a vendor account. And I mean, if we're at a different point in time and all of a sudden this occurred in maybe February or March, then I might say, well, okay, then come forward with that plan and say, okay, for the May and June departmental transfers, what is your plan?
Right, but that scenario is very different. That's saying, like, Chief Illingsworth needs, has too much overtime. He has the money in his budget. He comes and he says, I'm presenting this to you, and here is my plan for your approval, and this is my plan, come town meeting, this will move over here. That's a whole different scenario than for us to be looking at an expense report and saying, what happened here? So I'm just looking for assurance that anytime a department head, a committee, whatever, anticipates a problem with overspending a line, that the expectation from you as the CFO would be that they would present that plan and scenario for approval by the select board.
That is correct. I mean,
and it wouldn't just be overspent, and there's no checks and balances or stopgap in the accountant's office to make sure that doesn't happen until there is approvals put in place.
And currently, the, shall we say, I won't say edict, but the direction that the town accountant has been given is that, okay, no account line item is overspent.
Okay.
Right, so I think that's the difference, is that if the select board is aware of all the moving parts.
Right.
And in a public session acknowledges it and approves the plan, is different than the line item from the weights and measure department, which doesn't exist, that's overspent by $5,000, not to isolate any department.
Yeah.
It's like, where did this come from? Because the town accountant should not allow anything to go on a vendor warrant that doesn't have the funds. I mean, that's the stopgap. And then internally, if he reports that to you, and we take the steps, and then if it comes to us and we decide to take the vote, then it's transparent and it's clear. And I think that's fair.
I mean, and the flip side, just to go a little further, it's a little different subject or whatever. It's like, okay, the town accountant knows that, as far as anyone charging or attempting to charge an invoice to any of the ARPA accounts, it doesn't go through unless it's got the PO number with it, now that we have PO numbers.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure that there's a plan.
Okay.
There is.
Okay.
And then that's what I reported on. They are in the process of looking at the data, translating it, see its impact on their budget, and what their plan is to address it, and resolve
Okay,
it,
good.
and what they'll come
Perfect.
forward to us with. So,
Anything else that can't wait?
Can I just ask one other question about what you just mentioned about the assistant accountant? So it's been a few months without an assistant accountant. We're hopeful that with the new Indeed and posting that we'll get help. How is Bradley doing now in terms of not having assistance for entering and that sort of thing?
So far, so good. We will be going into with basically the actual close and the filing of the fiscal year 20, I was going to say 21, but fiscal year 2022 information with the Department of Revenue. He's going to get busy with that. So I'm hoping that we will have somebody on board to start in, 30 days or so.
Okay, good. Hopefully. Thanks.
Okay. Next on the list, do we have an update on COVID-19?
COVID's still out there. Every day there's more and more people that either I know or we might have employed or be a vendor to us that is, shall we say, testing positive. So it's definitely still an issue. I know that, two of the pharmaceutical companies have now come out with, booster shots that are supposedly more effective against the Omicron virus, which is the one that is, going through everything, right now and is supposedly much more contagious than the original. So it's still an issue. I know that Ian and, or I should say, Chief Illingsworth, Chief Workman, and our health director, Jerry Swanson, just got together to go through some of our supplies and to not only free test kits from the state that are available, but to take a look at other PPE offerings such as masks and whatever. So I don't see this really, is it becoming more of an everyday occurrence that we might be getting used to it? Yes, but I don't see it going away for a while.
Right.
And as we're forced inside now, because of the cold weather coming, there's probably going to be a higher rate of transmission than we would all been able to do things outdoors.
Well, that's one theory behind it, but, I will say, another piece of that is, okay, we're coming off the spring, summer, and fall, and of course, football goes on and whatever, but, all the concerts and gatherings and fairs and, whatever that have been outside, you can still contract it and that type of atmosphere too. But you're right, once you come inside and you don't have the air changes and, what have you, yes, exactly.
I do think that we should have, the email that we got said free test kits, free mask. So Chief Workman did get back to me and say that he was meeting and they were discussing what the supply is. But I don't see why we just don't put test kits right out there by the treasurer's office. There's no reason for them to be behind a locked door. I don't know if you can pass that along to the Board of Health, but it just seems like, I just did one this morning because I was visiting somebody that was at risk, and so I just feel like they should be widely available, and they're free, so why not?
Okay, East Street Bridge update. And just before you start that, Ed, I know for the rest of the committee, Easthampton Media is having technicalities. They're recording it internally, but it's not being broadcast. And we've been on wide angle all evening without our close-ups of our pretty faces.
Sure, everyone's fine with that.
Yeah, East Street Bridge is on schedule to still open for October 3rd. Last week they had, it looks like to me, I know they were working on the guardrails, looks like they finished those. This week's schedule is final paving, and I know they're supposed to work on something else, and I forget what it is, but it is definitely
It'd be nice if you could come up with some sort of program. Maybe we could do a little fundraiser for who wants to drive the first car across the bridge. Make a donation to the parks or something.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Interesting idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or have the chair of the select board, not me, walk across the bridge, in success. We should do something for publicity.
I just want to mention that,
Be
go ahead,
good. Be
Francine.
good.
I just want to mention that we heard last time when the ARPA requests from Bashistas that they've been really badly hurt by the bridge closing. So I just want to encourage people to support our farms. This is a very big time of year with harvest and also Halloween coming that, try to support Southampton farms. We are a right to farm community, so it'd be good support.
VoIP update?
Yes, everything's here. I'm in the process of actually scheduling the company to do the training and implementation on a day. Usually they'll do the training in the morning, just trying to coordinate and make sure that at least 99% of our staff is here when that is done, so that when it goes live, that I don't, or someone doesn't get a bunch of questions like a day later by half the staff that, how do you use this, or what have you, so.
Okay.
Are you including Dave Arnold from the assessors along with that? Just in the absence of a principal assessor, I think he feels like he'd probably be helping Janine on that, too.
Well, yeah, I mean, when we do the training, it's not just going to be for the department heads, it's actually going to be for all the employees or individuals that are in the town hall.
Is it a very unique system? It's not, is it something that people would not have experienced anywhere else? Because what I'm thinking is, why don't we try to record the training?
Well, actually, they do that. They actually send you, I mean, you can do it virtually, or you can also do it in person, but I'm going to really encourage the in-person part of the training, because at least that portion, like I say, the intent is to do it in the morning, and basically they do that and the phones go live at like noon that day.
No. And there will be new staff coming on who are going to need training.
Right.
And you have something.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Hopefully next time we meet, Ed, you'll have a date for this mandatory training, because I think you mentioned your pending
Might
date
even
last time.
be a couple days after that meeting, so.
Okay, just making sure we keep this ball rolling.
Okay, next we have personnel change forms, PCFs and PRFs. We have one from the Highway Department for PRF, Highway Department mechanic, full-time benefited. And for the committee's information, when PPB met at its first meeting of this new year, we took a vote to allow the chair to just sign off on routine matters, which basically are resignations. We don't need to wait for that. And this one, because this is not changed except for the salary scale, and was previously approved on January 27th, 2019, there's no change. So this would just be approved without a hearing from PPB, because there's nothing to reconsider.
All right, I'll make a motion then to approve the PRF for a Highway Department mechanic.
A second.
There's a motion made by Maureen, seconded by Joy. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
I'm sorry, can I just mention one thing? Under the job description, under physical demands, it says moderate physical strength. Is that typical for that position? Seems like it would be a heavy lift. No?
Not necessarily.
Okay. I was just curious about it. It's not, doesn't affect the motion. I just made a note.
Okay. Next, we have minutes to approve, May 18th, 2022.
I have one correction that needs to be made on the first page, all the way at the bottom, that last paragraph. It says a motion was moved by Maureen Groden and seconded by blank.
Oh, yes, good point. Did Kathy do these? Or
See
did
how important it is to speak into those microphones?
Yep. It was a $19 million vote. Bro.
Yeah.
Well, that might be tough to...
So, well, yeah, we'll have to go back and listen to the recording again.
Just watch it, see whose lips move.
This one,
It'll work that way.
we may have been upstairs for, because it says Wednesday. I think this was the one that coincided with the planning board.
Right.
And then we had to go upstairs.
Oh, yeah, the round table.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's
It was a very effective meeting.
Yeah.
Yes.
And actually, that microphone being above the tape, that actually does usually pick up pretty well, so.
Okay, so we'll table that.
Yep.
Well, were there any other adjustments? No? Okay. Pending items, is there any update on any of those three items? Old Town Hall, Clearwater, Woodland, East Street?
I'll just say on the Clearwater Woodland, I think we're finally between the three parties at the end of requested edits, negotiations, or whatever. at the end, Kestrel really didn't want to be part of a license agreement. They were okay to attest to it and approve it. So, yeah, I think we're finally there.
Okay. All right. And then our next select board meeting is September 27th. October dates to be set. Do we want to wait till the 27th so that the chair can pick the dates, or do we want to just take the next rotations, which would be the 11th and the 25th?
I will not be present for the 11th meeting.
Well, that's consistent with the,
The flow.
The every other.
yeah,
That's fine.
would be,
You're not there on which one?
The 11th.
Okay, I
That's
might
the
not be
same
on
weekend of Indigenous Peoples' Day. that-
Yeah.
I'm a pencil in for the 25th.
Okay.
okay.
So we'll tentatively plan on the 11th and the 25th and leave with Chris. With no other matters to come before the board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Maureen, seconded by Francine. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None?
Thank you.
Well,
Job, John.